Hello and welcome to another episode from the Water's Edge, and you catch up with us today on an evening session on the River Yare. Now, I've been fishing a little while and we're into another fish, so hopefully I'll get this one in and then we'll talk to you a little bit about exactly what we're going to be doing for the few hours this evening. Well, it's a start, but I hope that isn't the biggest fish we've got to show you today. Now, the River Yare is well known for plenty of skimmers, but they certainly go a lot bigger than that. But yeah, we've had a couple of fish, you know, a few a little bit bigger than this one, but a few of these as well. But what we're hoping, as I said, is we're fishing into the evening today, so I'm hoping as this light fades, which we've probably got about, I don't know, an hour, hour and a half, maybe 2 hours of this sort of light left. And then as it gets into darkness, hopefully the bigger fish are going to play ball. But we'll get this one slipped into the net, and then we'll talk to you a bit more about the session. Well, as I said, hopefully that's not the biggest fish we're going to show you today, but a little bit more about exactly what we're doing. So as I mentioned, we're sitting here now on the River Yare, and it probably is my favourite river, if I'm honest. Now, I've been lucky enough, you know, to travel, fish the Trent, the Severn, big rivers, really popular, but I think more so is that I grew up around here, so for me it holds a bit of a soft spot, and that's certainly what I'm trying to recreate today. As you can see, I've sort of gone back to old school as I started. The seat box is gone, I'm sitting on a chair. I'm actually fishing 2 rods today, so there's another rod out there as well, and in the hope that, you know, as I said, an evening's bream fishing, we can put some bigger baits on, mess around with 2 rods and try and catch yourself some of the bigger bream that do live here in the Yare. Now obviously you catch them during the day, but just to be honest, I haven't done this kind of fishing, like into darkness, for so long. I just can't remember how long it's been. So yeah, it's just recreating stuff that I used to do, what started getting me into river fishing really. And I think some of the best fishing was when it was dark, so that's what we're hopeful for today. But actually at the moment the tide is pretty much stopped, so for the fishing perhaps for the next half an hour, 45 minutes is going to be quite difficult. I'm not saying you won't catch fish, we've obviously just had that bite, but certainly you tend to catch more when there's a nice tide running. And like I said, on the other rod that's out at the moment, I've got a bigger bait on, I've got a bit of double corn on there, and on this rod here it's probably the one that I'll concentrate a bit more on, drum around and try and create some more interest and see what's out there. But I've picked myself a fireback marker, so we're going to fire it out there, hit the clip, and then it's really deep here to be honest. I'm probably guessing it's about 15 foot with a drop we've got, around about that depth. And then we're just going to slowly have to tighten down to it. And normally you'd obviously leave it sort of to let the tide pick it up, but as we haven't got any tide at the moment, we're going to have to tighten down to it. But as always, it's really important with bream fishing, you've got to keep that dinner bell ringing, you've got to keep your bait going in, and the more fish you can get in the area, the more casts in the same spot, hopefully the better the fishing's going to be. So I'm going to sit and watch those tips now, anticipate perhaps a slightly slower period, maybe with the odd bite, and as we get a little bit later on, hopefully we've got some better fishing to show you. Well, I took that one up. The bite didn't take very long at all. As always, as soon as you say something on camera, the fish have other ideas. But to catch pretty much when it's slack water, I'll take any size of fish. I don't think this one's particularly very big either. I think he's putting up a slightly better account for himself than the last one. But yeah, he's a bit bigger. But he certainly caught us by surprise, because I was expecting to wait a bit longer than that for a bite, if I'm honest. But like I said, we'll definitely take them in the conditions that we've got. Hopefully as the tide coincides with picking up and the darkness falling, the fishing should get better and better. But here we go, there's another one to show you. Certainly bigger than the other one. There's absolutely loads of these here in the river, yeah. Like when I'm match fishing, this is the sort of size fish that probably makes up the majority of my weight. You know, good roach mixed in, sort of hand sized sort of pound skimmers, and then if you get the odd bonus fish, happy days. But you do need the right conditions for that. You know, you've got to have a bit of colour in the river, and then the big fish tend to feed. But hopefully, as I said, into darkness, doesn't really matter what colour the river is. So we'll get this one slipped in the net, and then we'll have a little talk to you about the rig while this river picks up a bit of pace. Well, having not bream fished for a while, I can tell you I've not missed that. They are mega slimy. So I think river fish are even worse, and then as the fish get bigger they get more slimy. But always have a towel with you. There's the first bream fishing tip. But right, we'll get this net out of the way, and then we'll have a closer look at the rig, because if you follow our channel before, you've seen we've fished this river many times, and I've actually changed how I present my bait, how my rig sits, so it's worth talking through because it is different to what we've shown you before. There, another classic example of bream fishing. But we'll get rid of that, and then we'll have a proper look, because basically the change has come here at the feeder end. So first of all, let's start off with the feeder. Now the feeder is just a standard 2 hands Nisa feeder. Now I changed my feeder to the state of the tide, so at the moment I probably don't need 2 hands, but when it gets running I will. I may have to up it if it gets even faster, but if you're really trying to catch a load of fish, the more you can get your feeder critically balanced, the better. So as the tide slackens off, put a lighter feeder on, and then get away with the lightest possible feeder you can for the fishing situation. But actual how I set it up, so here's the difference. Now I used to run the feeder in between 2 loops, but I actually quite like now, just for a bit of fish safety, it runs in between 2 beads. Now there's a little bit of movement there, but if the bites are really awkward, I can slide those beads down, and now that feeder is locked. Sometimes that makes a difference, but I do tend to find having a bit of movement there gives the fish a little bit of a chance to pick the bait up before they realise something's wrong, and then bang, like the self hooking comes into it. Then underneath that is a twisted loop. Now the twisted loop does pretty much exactly what it does in any style of fishing. It creates a boom section to keep your hook link away from the feeder, so that's the only reason for that. Onto there is a double swivel, which is a double barreled swivel. Now when you've got a lot of tide flow and you're reeling in big feeders, big hook baits, your hook link really does twist up, so it's really important to have like a double barrel twist, and any sort of anti-twist swivel is all you need. And then that comes on to a hook link, which again, play around with length, but I tend to go for about 1 metre, just because for me over the years fishing here, that's what I find out has worked out best. So not a particularly complicated rig, probably, you know, many people have used it over the past, but for me I've sort of switched over from what I used to fish, and I just feel a bit more comfortable fishing in that way, and it certainly produces the results. So I'm going to slip on 3 maggots this time. Like I says, as I'm not particularly expecting it to be really flying at the moment, I'll just go with maggot, and then we'll go with bigger baits as it gets later on, and then I'm going to talk you through the baits a bit later on as well. But I'm eager to get this one out there. That wind's starting to pick up slightly, so I hope no rain's coming. We had a little bit of rain earlier, but it's been alright since then. And again, just hit the clip, wait for that to hit the bottom, and then as there's no tide, same again, I'm going to have to tighten down to it, and we're fishing away. And I'll sit and watch these tips, probably chuck the other rod out, a couple of casts on each, wait for this tide to pick up, and hopefully we're going to have another fish to show you after that. Well, the tide is just about thinking about moving again, so hopefully from now the fishing really will pick up, and this one feels a little bit bigger than perhaps some of the ones we've had before, so hopefully we're going to have another fish to show you. It's coming towards the net now. we go. I think he's probably about the same sort of size as the one we showed you earlier actually, but with a little bit more tide now. Well, the hook's popped that in there, that's lucky. With the hook a bit more tide now, I feel like, let's get that grass off him. I feel like he put a bit of a better account up for himself. But yeah, the light is really starting to dull down now, so what I'll do is I'll slip this fish in the net, and just before we lose the light we'll talk you through the baits that we've got with us and that we're using, because I think probably now is the time to start really trying to target them bigger ones. But we'll get this slipped in the net and we'll have a look at the baits. Right, so let's have a quick look at the baits, and I don't think, to be honest, it's anything secretive. Everyone pretty much uses the same thing when it comes to bream fishing, but we'll start off with the ground bait. This is slightly different to what I normally use. So pretty much I use the ground bait just as a carrier really, but I've actually gone for a more fish meal based ground bait purely because of what we've been saying through this whole video about we're trying to fish into darkness and try and catch some bigger fish. So if there's a bit of fish meal in there that puts the roach off, I'm really not bothered today. In a match I wouldn't be so confident to do that. I definitely want to be catching everything that swims. But yeah, so the ground bait to carry pretty much your main bait, which is chopped worms, casters, and then sweet corn. Those are the three that I really put into my mix. So it might be that I'll put a pinch of each into the feeder, carried by the ground bait, and then that's what you keep ringing that dinner bell, and hopefully what's going to bring those bream into you. Now I don't think it matters if it's a still water, a river, a canal, anything. I probably would use the same baits for bream fishing wherever I went. But what I'm going to do now with, certainly with hook baits, is I feel like I've had my fill of skimmers, if I'm honest, and that one was a little bit bigger, so it's now time to really concentrate on trying to catch ourselves a better fish. So I'm going to go for a whole worm on this rod. The other rod, still no action on that, but I'm hopeful that's going to come good at the darkness. And big baits hopefully going to mean some big fish. So a whole worm, 2 bits of corn on one. Now this is what I'm on about, a sandwich. So plug one end of your feed with the ground bait, a little bit of worm, a little bit of casters, a few grains of corn, and then you cap the other end. So there's loads of actual bait in there with just a ground bait carrier. Nice bit of fish meal ground bait. So again, nothing complicated. It never is with bream fishing, but you know, it's what you need to do to get yourselves a few bites. So I'm going to ping this one out there, perhaps get 4 or 5 casts going to really sort of kick the session off, to see if we can encourage a few bigger fish in, and then I'm going to get myself prepared for darkness. So that's the plan for the next 5 or 10 minutes, really get this swim going and get myself ready. But that's hit the bottom nicely. I'm going to pop that on the rest, give it a minute or so, and then do exactly what we just said. Well, that didn't quite go to plan. I'd planned to have 5 or 6 real quick chucks to see if I could kick it off, and then the tip swung round, and this one feels an awful lot bigger, to be honest with you. Like I said, the tide's definitely moving now, so that's going to be having an impact on it, but it's definitely bigger than what we've caught before. And like I said, we're not, you know, we are definitely losing the light. It's probably easy for me to see than it is the camera light. Cameras never really do it justice, but yeah, this is what we're here for. This is hopefully going to be the first of many. Literally that little switch to a whole worm, and we have got ourselves one that is a lot better. So let me see if I can unhook him and we'll give you a look at him. That was a proper bream by that one. I sort of looked up, was then going to sort the other rod out, and the tip was all slack, so I knew it was going to be a better fish, and there we go. That's more what you'd expect to, we feel that you're going to, we expect to catch as the light fades. And like I said, certainly don't sort of come here and think you can't catch these during the day, because you actually 100% can. But you know, I wouldn't go as far as saying it's guaranteed, but I think you'd be pretty unlucky if you came and fished it well in an evening session not to start getting amongst a few of these. So yeah, hopefully things are definitely on the up. So we'll get this one slipped in the net, and then we'll prepare ourselves for the darkness. We're going to get some tip lights on, headlight out, and then get ready for a few more of these. Well, we're into our first fish of what I will say since proper darkness, since I can't see now without the aid of lights, and I would normally have my headlight on, but for filming purposes it doesn't look very good for you guys with me shining a light right in your face. So the light's on the camera, so I hope you can see just about enough to see exactly what's going on. But this one's coming towards the net, so I'm going to concentrate on getting this one in, and then I'm just going to talk to you a little bit about how we prepared for darkness. Well, there we go, another River Yare Bream to show you, and pretty much now I would hope that there's a few of these sitting out there ready. It's amazing really, because I think they must be out there, you know, during the day, but if you don't have the right light conditions or the right water clarity, you know, if there's not enough colour in it, they just don't tend to feed, and it does sometimes take the drop in a light to make them put their heads down and have a real go. But yeah, these sort of the size of the fish that are really good in a match. If you're match fishing during the day and you can catch a few of these, they are like the better sort of size fish for here on the Yare. But what I'll do is I'll slip this one in the net and then just talk to you a little couple of tips about how you get prepared for the night, what I'm using. You know, if you've not been out there and done a bit of this, sometimes fishing at night can be tricky. You've got to have everything ready and be prepared for it. So I'll talk to you through a couple of tips that I've got for you once we just slip this one back. Got a few more of them, and that will be well worth coming out and sort of reliving what I used to like when I was younger. But yeah, as I mentioned, a few little tips for you if you're not used to this sort of night fishing, bream fishing especially, because it's quite active. You know, you've got to get yourself prepared. So I've mentioned already that I've got some starlights on. Now there's a few different variations you can get of that. So because I haven't done this for so long, and I don't particularly come out night fishing for bream too often, I went for the real cheap starlights, the ones that you just give them a crack, shake them, and then basically there's a chemical reaction inside them, which means they'll glow for sort of, I don't know, perhaps 6, 7, 8 hours. So more than enough for, you know, a sessions or a night's bream fishing. If you were going to do a lot of this, there's little lights that you can call beta lights, and they last like 15 years. They pretty much just glow all the while, just slightly duller light, but they're more than ample for it. You can get little rod holders, so I've just taped these ones on, but you can get little holders to put them on. So depending how much you're going to do to sort of decide what sort of tip light you're going to get. Obviously, secondly, make sure you've got a really good headlight. Now currently at the moment, as I've mentioned, I'm using the camera light so I can get away and just about see what I'm doing, but when the camera's not on, you've got a really good headlight shining to make sure that you can see exactly what you're doing. Because there's, trust me, if you haven't got a good headlight and you're scrambling around sort of just being able to see what you're doing, it really is hard. It makes things difficult. And then I would say probably lastly, the only other thing to think about is just get everything to hand. I've got it on my side tray, I know where my net is, I haven't got to move from where I am. The last thing you want to be doing is scrambling around all over your peg, dropping things here and there, because you'll just lose it and it'll get really frustrating and you just won't enjoy your fishing. So some real simple tips there, that if you've not been out doing this style of fishing, how you can just get that little bit more comfortable and enjoy your fishing. But I'm going to plug away for a few more casts and see if we can have another one of those bream. Well, we are into another fish, and it has been very good, to be honest with you. As expected, when it gets to complete darkness, they do just sort of queue up one after another. But in all honesty, it's starting to drizzle quite hard now, and although I'm probably one of the only few people who are mad enough to sit out in this bream fishing, it's not very good for filming. So I'm probably going to call it a night for the filming and just carry on for a couple of hours enjoying what I used to do. You know, what I used to do when I get back into river fishing. This was one of the first things that I'd done, so to come out and sort of do it after all these years has been completely enjoyable for me. So just swing that feeder out of the way, and then we'll have one last fish to show you if he behaves himself. They tend to go pretty mental when the light's on them. This must be pretty scary, come out of complete blackness to a light shined in your face. But there we go, a nice one to end on. And once you get them going in the evening, it literally is one after the other. So I'm going to leave it there. There's nothing left for me to say apart from I hope you've enjoyed it, but for now we'll see you again on the next one.